The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in September 1878, and Isaac Brennan stood at the train station in Santa Rosa, New Mexico Territory, wondering if he had made the worst mistake of his life. He held the worn paper in his calloused hands, reading the words for perhaps the 100th time since he had received it 3 weeks prior. Arriving September 19th. Stop. Bringing my mother who needs care. Stop. Hope this is acceptable. Stop. Victoria Gardner. The train whistle pierced the clear desert air, and Isaac's heart hammered against his ribs. He had expected a bride, yes. That had been the arrangement through the marriage broker in St. Louis. What he had not expected was a woman bringing her elderly mother along. The additional mouth to feed concerned him less than the fact that this woman, whoever she was, valued family enough to bring her aging parent across half the country, rather than abandon her to some asylum or poorhouse back east. That quality spoke to something deep in Isaac's chest, something that had been hollow since his own parents died in a cholera outbreak 6 years ago. He was 32 now, owner of a modest but growing cattle ranch 5 miles outside Santa Rosa, and so damned lonely, he sometimes talked to his horses just to hear a human voice, even if it was his own. The train screeched to a halt, steam billowing across the wooden platform. Isaac straightened his shoulders, brushed dust from his best shirt, and watched as passengers began to disembark. A businessman with a leather case, 2 miners heading south, a family with 4 children. Then he saw her. Victoria Gardner stepped down from the train car with careful precision. Her traveling dress, a deep blue that had seen better days but was clean and carefully mended. She was perhaps 25, with dark auburn hair pinned beneath a simple bonnet, and eyes that scanned the platform with an intensity that suggested intelligence and wariness in equal measure. Her face was pale from travel, but even exhausted, she possessed a quiet beauty that made Isaac forget to breathe for a moment. Then an older woman appeared in the train car doorway, and Victoria immediately turned to help her down. The elderly woman moved slowly, each step deliberate and pained. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair and a face lined by years of hardship but softened by a gentle smile. Her hands shook slightly as she gripped Victoria's arm, and Isaac noticed the careful way Victoria supported her, bearing most of her mother's weight without making it obvious. Isaac approached, removing his hat. "Miss Gardner," Victoria turned, and up close her eyes were green like new grass after rain. "Mr. Brennan." "Yes, madam," he nodded to the older woman, "and this must be your mother." "Vera Garrett," the older woman said, her voice surprisingly strong despite her frail appearance. "I hope my presence is not an imposition, Mr. Brennan. My daughter insisted, though I told her a man seeking a wife likely has no need for an old woman underfoot." "Any family of Miss Gardner's is welcome," Isaac said, and he meant it. "I have a wagon just there. Santa Rosa has a small boarding house where you ladies can stay while I make proper arrangements." Victoria's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Arrangements?" "For housing," Isaac clarified quickly. "My cabin is small, just 2 rooms, not suitable for 3 people, especially with your mother needing proper care. I had planned to build an addition anyway before winter comes. Now I will just need to build it larger and faster." Something in Victoria's face relaxed, though she still studied him with that searching gaze. "You intend to build us a proper home?" "Yes, madam, a house fitting for a family." Isaac gestured toward the wagon. "Let me get your luggage first." They had 3 trunks and 2 carpet bags, everything they owned in the world, Isaac guessed. He loaded them into the wagon bed while Victoria helped her mother settle onto the bench seat. When he climbed up to take the reins, he caught Victoria watching him with an expression he could not quite read. The ride through Santa Rosa was quiet except for the wagon wheels and the distant sounds of the town. Victoria sat between Isaac and her mother, her back straight despite obvious exhaustion. Vera Garrett dozed against her daughter's shoulder, and Isaac noticed how Victoria adjusted her position to make her mother more comfortable, never once complaining about the additional weight. "The boarding house is run by Mrs. Martinez," Isaac said, breaking the silence. "She is a good woman, keeps a clean establishment. You will be comfortable there." "How long do you think the building will take?" Victoria asked. "If I can get help from some ranch hands and neighbors, maybe 3 weeks, 4 at most. The weather should hold that long." "That is a significant expense, Mr. Brennan, boarding house fees and construction materials." Isaac glanced at her. "I have been saving for 5 years." A man does not send for a bride unless he can provide for her. And for her elderly mother, there was challenge in her voice, but also vulnerability. Isaac understood then that she had been preparing for rejection since the moment she boarded the train in St. Louis. "And for her family," he confirmed. "I meant what I said, Miss Gardner. You are welcome here, both of you." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "My mother has palsy. Her hands shake, and sometimes her legs do not support her well. She needs help with many daily tasks. That was why I could not leave her behind, even though I knew bringing her might cause you to refuse the arrangement." "Why would I refuse?" "Because most men want a wife, not a wife and an obligation." Isaac pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the boarding house, a neat adobe building with a red tile roof. He set the brake and turned to look at Victoria directly. "Miss Gardner, I was 17 when cholera took my parents within 3 days of each other. I would give everything I own to have had 1 more year with them, 1 more month, 1 more day. You brought your mother because you love her and because she needs you. That is not an obligation. That is devotion. Any man who cannot see the difference is a fool." Victoria's eyes glistened, but she blinked rapidly and looked away. "Thank you," she whispered. Vera Garrett stirred and lifted her head. "Are we here?" "Yes, Mama." Victoria's voice steadied as she focused on her mother. "Let me help you down." Mrs. Martinez greeted them warmly, her round face creasing with a welcoming smile. She was perhaps 50, with black hair streaked with gray and the confident manner of a woman who ran her establishment with both kindness and firmness. Isaac made the introductions and paid for 2 weeks in advance, which caused Victoria to glance at him with surprise. "I will come by tomorrow morning," Isaac told Victoria as Mrs. Martinez showed them to their room. "We can discuss the house plans if you like. I want you to have input on how it is built." "You want my opinion?" Victoria asked. "You will be living in it. Of course I want your opinion." After helping get the trunks inside, Isaac drove his wagon back toward his ranch as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. The land here was beautiful in its harsh way, all red rock and scrub brush and endless sky. He had carved out a life here through back-breaking work and determination, building his herd from 20 head of cattle to nearly 200. The cabin he lived in was sturdy but spare, built for function rather than comfort. Now he needed to build a home. Not just a house, but a place where Victoria and her mother could feel safe and cared for. The thought filled him with purpose and, unexpectedly, hope. That night, Isaac sat at his small table with paper and pencil, sketching rough plans by lamplight. He would need at least 4 rooms, maybe 5. A bedroom for Victoria and himself once they were properly married. A bedroom for Vera. A kitchen and main room. Perhaps a small room for storage or, someday, a nursery. The thought made his chest tighten with an emotion he barely recognized anymore. Want, not just for land or livestock or success, but for family, for connection, for love. He wondered what Victoria was thinking in her boarding house room, whether she regretted coming west, whether she found him acceptable. They had only exchanged 3 letters through the marriage broker, carefully worded missives that revealed little of their true selves. He knew she had worked as a seamstress in St. Louis, that her father had died 2 years ago, that she had no siblings. She knew he owned a ranch, that he was honest and hardworking, that he sought a wife to share his life. Everything else they would have to learn as they went. The next morning dawned clear and warm, typical for New Mexico in September. Isaac rode into town before breakfast, stopping first at the general store to purchase paper and better pencils for drawing plans. Then he headed to the boarding house, where Mrs. Martinez directed him to the small dining room where Victoria and her mother were finishing breakfast. "Mr. Brennan," Victoria said, rising as he entered. She wore a different dress today, gray with small buttons up the front, and her hair was braided in a thick plait over one shoulder. "I did not expect you so early. I wanted to catch the lumber yard when it opened," Isaac said, "but I hoped we might discuss the house first. If you are not too tired from travel." "I am not tired," she glanced at her mother. "Mama, will you be all right if I step out for a while?" "Of course, dear." Vera smiled at them both. "Go make your plans. I will sit in the courtyard and enjoy the sunshine. It is lovely here, so different from St. Louis." They walked together down Santa Rosa's Main Street, past the general store and the saloon and the small church with its whitewashed walls. Isaac found himself acutely aware of Victoria beside him, the way she moved with quiet grace, the way she took in everything around her with those observant green eyes. "Tell me about the ranch," she said as they walked. So Isaac described his land, the small canyon with its reliable creek, the grazing areas, the holding pens he had built. He told her about his cattle, his 2 horses, the garden plot that never grew much because he had no skill with plants. He found himself talking more than he usually did, drawn out by her questions and the genuine interest in her expression. "And your cabin?" she asked. "Small," he admitted. "I built it myself 6 years ago. 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, a good roof, but nothing fancy. I spent more time on the barn and pens than on my own living space." Victoria smiled slightly. "That sounds like something a rancher would do." They reached the lumber yard, where Isaac introduced Victoria to Harold Simmons, the owner. Harold was a weathered man in his 50s who had been supplying Isaac with materials for years. When Isaac explained his need for lumber to build a house, Harold's eyebrows rose with interest. "A house, not just a cabin addition. You are serious about this." "Very serious." Isaac spread his rough sketches on Harold's work table. 4 main rooms, maybe 5. Solid construction, built to last. Harold studied the drawings, then looked at Victoria. "You are the bride, I take it?" "I am Victoria Gardner, yes. And you approve of these plans?" Victoria stepped closer to the table, examining the sketches. Isaac watched her face as she took in his rough drawings. After a long moment, she said, "May I make a suggestion, please?" Isaac said. She picked up the pencil. "If you move the kitchen here, it would catch morning light from this window. And if you add a small covered porch on this side, my mother could sit outside even in hot sun or light rain. She loves fresh air, but her skin burns easily now." Isaac looked at her additions. They made perfect sense and would add maybe a day to the construction time. "Those are good changes." Victoria met his eyes. "You really want my input?" I said I did. Many men say things they do not mean. Isaac held her gaze steadily. "I am not many men, Miss Gardner. When I give my word, I keep it." Something shifted between them in that moment, a tentative trust beginning to form. Victoria's expression softened, and she looked back at the plans. They spent the next hour working through details with Harold, who provided suggestions based on his experience. By the time they finished, they had solid plans and a list of materials. "I can have the lumber delivered to your ranch by day after tomorrow," Harold said. "That gives you a day to clear and level the building site." Isaac paid a deposit and shook Harold's hand. As he and Victoria left the lumber yard, he said, "Would you like to see the ranch? The ride is only about 30 minutes, and I could have you back by noon so you are not away from your mother too long." Victoria hesitated, then nodded. "I would like that. I should see where we will be living." They retrieved Isaac's wagon from the livery stable, and soon they were heading east out of Santa Rosa. The road was rough but well-traveled, winding through red rock formations and scrubby desert vegetation. Victoria sat beside Isaac on the wagon seat, her hands folded in her lap, taking in the landscape. "It is so open here," she said. "In St. Louis, buildings block the sky. Here the sky goes on forever. Does it frighten you?" "No," she considered the question. "It feels honest somehow. Like the land is showing you exactly what it is, no pretense." Isaac found himself liking the way she thought. That is a good way to see it. The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. The cabin sat in a sheltered spot near the creek, with the barn and pens arranged nearby. It was modest, but Isaac had always been proud of what he had built with his own hands. Now, seeing it through Victoria's eyes, he felt self-conscious about its roughness, but Victoria smiled as they approached. "You built this yourself, every board and nail. It looks sturdy. That matters more than fancy." Isaac helped her down from the wagon, trying not to notice how easily she fit in his hands, how natural it felt to touch her even briefly. He showed her the cabin first, apologizing for the sparse furnishings and the dust that accumulated despite his efforts to keep it clean. Victoria walked through slowly, her fingers trailing over the table he had made, the stone fireplace, the narrow bed in the second room. "You are a careful craftsman," she observed. "Everything is square and solid. The new house will be the same, I think. I will do my best to make it comfortable for you." She turned to face him in the small space of the cabin. "Why did you send for a mail-order bride, Mr. Brennan? You seem capable and established. Surely there are women in Santa Rosa who would have married you." Isaac considered the question. "Santa Rosa is small. Most of the unmarried women are very young, practically girls. The few near my age are already spoken for or not interested in ranch life. And I wanted someone who chose this deliberately, who understood what she was agreeing to, rather than someone who might later regret it." "Yes," Victoria nodded slowly. "I chose deliberately too. After my father died, the seamstress shop where I worked began to struggle. I could barely support myself, and my mother needed more care than I could give her while working 12 hours a day. When she began to fail more noticeably, I knew I had to find a solution. Marrying well seemed impossible because what man would take us both? But then I saw an advertisement for the marriage broker, and I thought perhaps distance might work in my favor. Perhaps a man on the frontier would value practical qualities over beauty or dowry." "You have both practical qualities and beauty," Isaac said, then felt heat rise in his face. "I apologize. That was too familiar." Victoria's cheeks colored, but she looked pleased rather than offended. "It was kind. Thank you." They walked outside, and Isaac showed her the rest of the ranch. Victoria asked intelligent questions about the cattle, the water rights, the challenges of ranching in this climate. She was not just being polite, Isaac realized. She genuinely wanted to understand his work and his life. When they reached the spot where he planned to build the house, slightly uphill from the cabin with a view of the canyon, Victoria stood quietly for a long moment. "My mother will love this," she finally said. "She can sit on that porch you will build and watch the sky change colors." She always loved sunsets, even more so now that her world has grown smaller. Isaac's chest tightened. Then I will build the finest porch I can manage. Victoria looked at him, and in her eyes he saw gratitude and something else, something that might become affection given time. You are a good man, Isaac Brennan. It was the first time she had used his given name, and it sounded right in her voice. They returned to Santa Rosa before noon as promised, and Isaac left Victoria at the boarding house with plans to return the next day. He spent the afternoon at the building site, clearing brush and rocks, leveling the ground with shovel and determination. The work was hard and hot, but it felt good to have such a clear purpose. Over the following days, Isaac fell into a routine. Each morning he would go to town, have breakfast with Victoria and Vera at the boarding house, then ride to the ranch to work on preparing the building site. Victoria often came with him, bringing lunch and spending a few hours helping in whatever way she could while her mother rested under Mrs. Martinez's care. They talked as they worked, gradually learning each other's histories and hopes. Isaac discovered that Victoria loved reading but had owned few books, that she could make nearly anything with needle and thread, that she had a quiet sense of humor that emerged unexpectedly and made him laugh, that she was far stronger than her slender frame suggested, both physically and in spirit. Victoria learned that Isaac had educated himself through borrowed books and old newspapers, that he had a gift for working with animals and could gentle even the most skittish horse, that he was unfailingly honest, sometimes to the point of bluntness, that beneath his reserved exterior, he felt things deeply and completely. On the third day, as they sat eating lunch in the shade of a cottonwood tree, Victoria said, "We should discuss the marriage itself. The timing and the ceremony. Isaac had been thinking about this. I do not want to rush you. We can wait until the house is finished if you prefer. Give you more time to be certain." Certain of what? That you want to go through with it, with me. Victoria set down her sandwich and looked at him directly. Isaac, I traveled 1,000 miles to marry you. I would not have come if I were not willing, but I appreciate that you want to give me choice in the timing. She paused. What do you want? What did he want? Isaac realized he wanted to marry Victoria Gardner as soon as possible, to make official what was already beginning to feel real in his heart. But he also wanted to do right by her. I want whatever makes you most comfortable, he said. But I will admit that I would like to be married before the house is finished, so we can move into it together as husband and wife, not as strangers sharing space. Victoria smiled. I would like that too. Shall we say in 1 week? That gives us time to arrange a simple ceremony and for me to make a suitable dress. You do not have a dress already. I have my traveling dresses, but I would like to be married in something I made specifically for the occasion. It feels important somehow. Isaac understood. 1 week then. I will speak to the pastor at the church. They married on a Wednesday morning in late September, in the small church in Santa Rosa with only a handful of people in attendance. Mrs. Martinez came, and Harold Simmons with his wife, a few of Isaac's neighbors and ranch hands. Vera Garrett sat in the front pew, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Victoria wore a dress she had sewn in stolen hours over the past week, a soft cream color with lace at the collar that she had carefully removed from an old dress and repurposed. She had pinned small wildflowers in her hair, purple asters that Isaac had picked from near the creek and brought to her that morning. Isaac wore his best suit, brushed clean and pressed with help from Mrs. Martinez. His hands shook slightly as he stood at the altar waiting for Victoria to walk down the aisle. When she appeared in the doorway, backlit by morning sun, his breath caught. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was his, or would be in a matter of minutes. The ceremony was brief and simple. Pastor Williams read from Scripture and spoke of commitment and love. Isaac and Victoria exchanged vows in steady voices, promising to honor and cherish each other for all their days. When Isaac slipped the simple gold band onto Victoria's finger, a ring he had purchased from the jeweler in town with a month's profits from cattle sales, her eyes met his with an intensity that made the rest of the world fall away. "You may kiss your bride," Pastor Williams said with a smile. Isaac leaned forward carefully, giving Victoria time to pull back if she wished. She did not. Their lips met softly, briefly, a promise more than a passion. When they separated, Victoria's cheeks were flushed and her eyes bright. They were married. Mrs. Martinez hosted a small celebration at the boarding house, providing cake and coffee and warm wishes. Vera hugged Isaac tightly, her frail arms surprisingly strong. "Take care of my daughter," she whispered. "She is strong, but she needs someone to take care of her for once." "I will," Isaac promised. "I swear it." That night, Isaac brought Victoria and Vera to the ranch. Victoria would stay with him in the cabin while the house was being built, and they had arranged for Vera to remain at the boarding house until the new house was ready. It was not ideal to be separated, but Victoria's mother had insisted. "You are newlyweds," Vera had said firmly. "You need time alone together. I will be perfectly content with Mrs. Martinez, who has already offered to teach me some of her cooking. You will visit every day, and in a few weeks, we will all be together properly." So Isaac drove Victoria to the ranch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red and purple. Victoria sat close to him on the wagon seat, and he could feel the warmth of her body through the layers of clothing between them. The cabin looked different to Isaac as they approached, less lonely somehow. He had cleaned thoroughly and picked more wildflowers to put in a jar on the table. Small gestures, but he hoped Victoria would notice. She did. "You brought the flowers inside," she said softly as they entered. "It is lovely." Isaac felt awkward suddenly, uncertain. They were married, but they were also still mostly strangers. He cleared his throat. "I know this is not the wedding night most women imagine. The cabin is small and rough." Victoria turned to face him. "Isaac, I did not come west expecting luxury. I came expecting honesty and respect and the possibility of building something real. So far, you have given me all of that and more." She stepped closer, and Isaac found himself reaching for her hands, folding them gently in his own. "I want you to be happy here, Victoria, truly happy, not just making the best of things." "I know." She looked up at him, and in the lamplight her eyes were very green. "I think I could be happy here, with you." Isaac kissed her again, longer this time, feeling her relax into his arms. The kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria smiled. "Perhaps," she said, her voice slightly unsteady, "you could show me where we will sleep." The following weeks passed in a blur of construction and discovery. The lumber arrived as scheduled, and Isaac began building with help from 3 ranch hands he hired temporarily, and several neighbors who came to lend assistance, as was customary on the frontier when someone was building a home. Victoria spent her days cooking for the work crew, a task she took seriously and executed well despite the limitations of the cabin's small stove. She visited her mother each morning, usually bringing Isaac with her, and the 3 of them would share breakfast before starting the day's work. The house took shape quickly with so many hands helping. First the foundation, then the framing, then walls and roof. Isaac worked from before sunrise until after sunset, determined to finish before the weather turned. Victoria worked alongside him whenever she could, holding boards steady or fetching tools or mixing mortar for the stone chimney. They learned each other in those weeks, the way married people do. Isaac discovered that Victoria sang quietly to herself while she cooked, old hymns and folk songs in a voice that was true and sweet. That she slept curled on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek. That she had a stubborn streak beneath her gentle demeanor, especially when it came to protecting her mother or insisting on doing her fair share of work. Victoria learned that Isaac woke before dawn naturally, his internal clock set by years of ranch work. That he had a habit of running his hand through his hair when thinking hard about a problem. That he was surprisingly well-read and could discuss Shakespeare and Plutarch with as much ease as cattle prices and weather patterns. That he was unfailingly gentle with her, never pushing, always asking, making sure she felt safe and valued. They grew closer in ways both large and small. Shared smiles across the worksite, hands that found each other more easily. Conversations that stretched late into the night as they lay together in the narrow cabin bed, learning each other's dreams and fears. Victoria told Isaac about her father, a bookkeeper who had loved his family more than success, who had died too young and left them struggling. Isaac told Victoria about his parents, farmers who had moved west seeking a better life, who had found it briefly before cholera stole them away. 4 weeks after their wedding, the house was finished. It stood solid and true on its foundation, 4 large rooms plus a storage room, just as they had planned. The covered porch Victoria had suggested ran along the south side, wide enough for chairs and a small table. The kitchen had windows that caught morning light. The bedrooms were spacious and well ventilated. Isaac had even managed to install glass windows, a significant expense but worth it for the light and protection they provided. On the day they moved in, Isaac carried Victoria over the threshold as tradition dictated, then went back to carry Vera, which made the old woman laugh and protest, but also tear up with happiness. They spent that first day arranging furniture that Isaac had purchased in Santa Rosa, pieces that Victoria had selected during trips to town. A real bed for their room, not the narrow cot from the cabin. A comfortable chair with cushions for Vera. A dining table large enough for family meals. Curtains that Victoria had sewn from fabric, she bought with money she insisted on contributing from her savings. That night, the 3 of them ate dinner together in the new house, and Isaac looked around the table at Victoria and Vera and felt something settle deep in his chest. Home. This was home, not just a building but the people within it, the connections being forged, the life being built. After dinner, Vera retired to her room, claiming exhaustion but also, Isaac suspected, wanting to give them privacy. Victoria and Isaac cleaned the dishes together in comfortable silence, their movements coordinated after weeks of working side by side. "Are you happy?" Isaac asked as Victoria dried the last plate. She smiled at him, the genuine smile that lit her whole face. "Yes, very happy. I know it has only been a few weeks, but this already feels more like home than anywhere I have lived since I was a child." "Good." Isaac dried his hands and reached for her, pulling her close. "Because I cannot imagine this place without you anymore. You and your mother, you have made everything better." Victoria wrapped her arms around his neck. "You built us a home, Isaac, not just a house, but a real home. How could we not love it here? How could I not love you?" The words hung in the air between them, momentous and true. Isaac felt his heart expand in his chest. "You love me." "I do." Victoria's voice was steady and sure. "I did not expect to, not so soon, but I do. You are everything good, Isaac. Kind and honest and hardworking and gentle. How could I not love you?" Isaac kissed her deeply, trying to pour everything he felt into the connection. When they broke apart, he said, "I love you too. I think I started falling for you the moment I saw you help your mother down from that train, so careful with her, so devoted. And every day since, you have given me more reasons to love you." They stood holding each other in their new kitchen, and Isaac felt complete in a way he never had before. The loneliness that had defined his life for so many years was gone, replaced by connection and purpose and love. The autumn passed into winter, and life on the ranch settled into comfortable routines. Isaac managed his cattle and prepared for the cold months ahead. Victoria kept the house and tended a large garden plot that they prepared together, planning for spring planting. Vera sat on her porch when weather permitted, watching the sky and the land, growing stronger in small ways with regular meals and loving care. They had visitors occasionally, neighbors who came for dinner or to help with larger tasks. Isaac and Victoria returned the hospitality, bringing food when someone was ill or helping with barn raisings and harvests. They became part of the community in a way Isaac never had as a bachelor. Victoria joined the ladies' sewing circle in town, and her skill with needle and thread earned respect and friendship. Vera, despite her limitations, became known for her wisdom and her stories of St. Louis, which fascinated the locals who had never been east of the Mississippi. Winter brought cold nights and occasional snow, and Isaac installed a second stove in the main room to keep the house warm. He taught Victoria to shoot, insisting she needed to know how to protect herself and her mother when he was out on the range. Victoria proved to be a surprisingly good shot, much to Isaac's delight and slight consternation. "You have a better eye than I do," he admitted after she hit the target 3 times in a row. "I like that it requires focus and stillness," Victoria said. "My hands are steady even if my heart is racing." They celebrated Christmas with a small tree that Isaac cut from the foothills and decorations that Victoria made from scraps of fabric and paper. Vera cried when she opened the gift Victoria had made for her, a beautiful shawl knitted from soft wool that Isaac had purchased. Isaac found himself blinking back tears when Victoria gave him a watch that she must have been saving for, a real silver timepiece with his initials engraved on the case. "You need to keep time properly," she said, "so you always come home when you say you will." "I will always come home to you," Isaac promised. The new year of 1879 arrived with cold winds and bright stars. In January, Victoria told Isaac that she was expecting a child, her eyes shining with joy and nervousness. Isaac swept her into his arms and spun her around the kitchen until she laughed and begged him to stop. "We are going to be parents," he said, still holding her close. "A baby, our baby." "Are you happy?" Victoria asked, echoing his question from months ago. "Happier than I thought possible." Vera, when told the news, wept openly. "I had hoped but dared not ask," she said, embracing Victoria carefully. "A grandchild, I will get to meet my grandchild." The pregnancy progressed through winter into spring. Isaac fretted constantly, insisting Victoria rest more, do less physical work. Victoria humored him to a point, but refused to be treated as an invalid. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she reminded him. "I am healthy and strong. The baby will be fine and so will I." Still, Isaac could not help worrying. He arranged for Dr. Harrison from Santa Rosa to check on Victoria monthly, paying the man's fee without question. He prepared the small storage room as a nursery, building a cradle with his own hands and sanding it until the wood was silk smooth. Victoria sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her face peaceful as she worked. Vera helped as much as her shaking hands allowed, mostly by keeping Victoria company and sharing wisdom from when she had been expecting Victoria herself, decades ago. The older woman's health had stabilized somewhat over the winter, the regular meals and warmth and lack of stress making a noticeable difference. She would never be robust again, but she had found a comfortable equilibrium. Spring brought new calves and the first planting in Victoria's garden, which promised to be magnificent. She had studied farming guides and talked to neighbors, and the carefully planned rows showed her dedication. Isaac helped when he could, though he freely admitted that Victoria had far more skill with growing things than he did. In late May, as the desert bloomed with unexpected wildflowers after a wet spring, Victoria's labor began. It started gently in the evening, just small contractions that made her pause in her tasks. By midnight, they were stronger and more regular, and Isaac rode hard to Santa Rosa to fetch Dr. Harrison. The labor lasted through the night and into the next afternoon, and it was the longest day of Isaac's life. He paced the main room while Vera and Dr. Harrison attended Victoria in the bedroom. Occasionally, he heard her cry out, and each time felt like a knife to his heart. He had never felt so helpless, so useless. Finally, as the sun began its descent, he heard a new sound. A baby's cry, strong and healthy and insistent. Isaac's legs went weak with relief. Dr. Harrison emerged from the bedroom, tired but smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Brennan. You have a fine son." A son. Isaac stood frozen for a moment, then moved toward the bedroom door. "Victoria, tired but well. Go meet your boy." Isaac entered the bedroom to find Victoria propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms, wrapped in the blanket she had made, was a tiny scrunching face with a shock of dark hair. "Isaac," she said softly, "come meet Isaiah." Isaiah. They had discussed names, and Victoria had suggested this one, a variation of Isaac's own name. He had loved it immediately. Isaac approached the bed carefully, as though too much movement might shatter this perfect moment. He looked down at his son, at the impossibly small fingers and the eyes that squinted against the light. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered. "He has your chin," Victoria said with a tired smile. "Already stubborn. And your eyes, I think." Vera appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "May I hold him?" Victoria nodded, and Isaac carefully lifted the baby and carried him to Vera, placing Isaiah in his grandmother's trembling arms. Vera looked down at the infant, and her expression was pure love. "Hello, little one," she murmured. "I am your grandmother, and I have waited so long to meet you." That night, after Dr. Harrison had returned to town and Vera had reluctantly gone to her own room, Isaac lay beside Victoria in their bed with Isaiah sleeping in the cradle next to them. Victoria's hand was in his, her breathing deep, and even as she rested. "Thank you," Isaac whispered. Victoria's eyes opened. "For what? For coming here, for trusting me, for making this life with me, for our son, for everything." Victoria squeezed his hand. "Thank you for giving us a home, for loving my mother as family, for being the man I hoped you would be, and so much more." "I love you, Victoria Brennan." "I love you, Isaac Brennan." They lay together in the darkness, listening to their son's small snuffling sounds, and Isaac thought about how different his life was now compared to just 1 year ago. Then, he had been alone, lonely, working his ranch with no one to work for but himself. Now he had a wife he loved deeply, a mother-in-law he had come to treasure, and a son who represented the future they were building together. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Isaiah proved to be a good baby overall, healthy and growing quickly, but he had the Brennan stubbornness Victoria had predicted. He wanted what he wanted when he wanted it, and he was not shy about expressing his displeasure. Isaac discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed. He walked the floor with Isaiah in the small hours of the morning when the baby would not settle, singing the same lullabies his own mother had sung to him. He changed diapers without complaint and learned to heat bottles to exactly the right temperature. He marveled at every small milestone, the first smile, the first time Isaiah grabbed his finger, the way the baby's eyes followed movement. Victoria bloomed in motherhood, her natural nurturing instincts finding full expression. She was patient and loving, but also firm when needed, establishing routines that helped Isaiah thrive. She still managed the house and the garden, though Isaac insisted on hiring a young woman from town, Maria Santos, to help 3 days a week so Victoria could rest. Vera doted on her grandson with the devotion of someone who had feared she might never see this day. Her health remained stable, and some days she seemed almost energetic as she sat in her rocking chair on the porch, holding Isaiah and telling him stories he was far too young to understand. Isaac often found them there, Vera singing old songs in a quavering voice while Isaiah stared at her face with solemn concentration. The ranch prospered that year. Beef prices were good, and Isaac's herd had grown to nearly 300 head. He hired 2 permanent ranch hands, young men who proved reliable and hardworking. This allowed Isaac to spend more time at the house with his family, something he valued more than any amount of money. In the fall, when Isaiah was 4 months old and just beginning to laugh at silly faces and sounds, Victoria told Isaac she wanted to start a small business. "I am home all day with the baby," she explained, "and while I love that, I also miss the satisfaction of creating things. I thought I might take in sewing work from the ladies in town. Mending, alterations, maybe some dressmaking. I could work during Isaiah's nap times and in the evenings." Isaac's first instinct was to say no, she had enough to do, but he caught himself. Victoria was not asking permission. She was telling him her plan, and she was right that she had the skill and the time if she managed it well. "I think that is a fine idea," he said. "We could set up a workspace in the storage room now that it is not being used as a nursery anymore." Victoria's face lit up. "Really? You do not mind? Why would I mind? You have a gift and you should use it. Just do not wear yourself out." Within a month, Victoria had established Brennan seamstress services, working from home and quickly gaining a reputation for fine work and fair prices. The additional income was nice, but more important was the way Victoria carried herself, proud and capable and fulfilled. The second year of their marriage was even better than the first. Isaiah grew into a sturdy toddler with dark curls and his mother's green eyes, curious about everything and fearless in his explorations. He said his first word, "Papa," to Isaac's delight and Victoria's mock outrage. He took his first steps chasing a barn cat, tumbling over and getting right back up with determination that made them both laugh. Vera's health began to decline slowly that winter. Nothing dramatic, but she grew more tired, moved a little slower, needed more help. Victoria hired Maria full-time to assist with both the housework and Vera's care, which the older woman accepted with good grace. She spent most of her time in the rocking chair now, watching life happen around her, content to be part of the family's rhythm. One evening in February, as snow fell softly outside, Vera called Isaac and Victoria into her room. Isaiah was already asleep in his crib, and the house was quiet. Vera sat in her bed, propped on pillows, looking smaller and more frail than Isaac had ever seen her. "I want to thank you both," she said quietly, "for giving me these years, these good years. I did not think I would live to see Victoria married, much less settled and happy. And a grandchild, a beautiful, healthy grandchild. You have given me more than I dared hope for." "Mama, do not talk like that," Victoria said, her voice catching. "You are fine, you are just tired." "I am tired," Vera agreed. So very tired, and that is all right. I have lived a good life, and the ending has been particularly sweet because of you two and that precious boy. She reached out trembling hands, and Isaac and Victoria each took one. Promise me you will be happy. Promise me you will raise Isaiah to be kind and strong. Promise me you will have more children and fill this house with love. We promise, Isaac said, his throat tight. All of it. Vera smiled and closed her eyes. Good. That is good. She slipped away 3 days later, quietly in the night, with Victoria holding her hand. The doctor said it was heart failure, a mercy really, no pain or suffering. Victoria wept in Isaac's arms, grieving the loss but also grateful that her mother had died peacefully, surrounded by love, in a home where she had been valued and cared for. They buried Vera on the hill above the house, with a view of the canyon and the endless sky she had loved. Pastor Williams said the service, and neighbors came to pay respects to a woman most had known only briefly, but all had respected. Isaac carved a headstone from good wood, planning to replace it with stone when weather permitted. The grief was hard, but it was clean grief, unmarred by regrets or unfinished business. Vera had died knowing she was loved, having met her grandchild, having seen her daughter happy and secure. It was, in its way, a good death. Victoria mourned deeply, but also moved forward, channeling her grief into love for Isaiah and Isaac, into her work, into living the life her mother had wanted for her. Isaac supported her however he could, holding her when she cried, listening when she wanted to talk about memories, taking on extra household tasks when she seemed overwhelmed. Spring came again, and with it, new life. Victoria discovered she was expecting their second child, due in early winter. Isaiah, now nearly 2 years old, was too young to understand but seemed to sense something was different, becoming extra cuddly and protective of his mother. Your mama thinks we should get pregnant every spring, Isaac joked with Isaiah one evening as they fed the chickens together. Before you know it, you will have a whole pack of brothers and sisters to boss around. Isaiah, who understood perhaps 1 word in 5, nodded seriously and threw grain with great enthusiasm. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Victoria remained active and healthy throughout. She often stood on the porch where Vera had spent so many hours, one hand on her growing belly, looking at the hill where her mother rested. Isaac knew she was talking to Vera in those moments, sharing news and seeking advice the way daughters do. Their daughter was born in December, a week before Christmas, during a cold snap that frosted the windows with ice. The labor was shorter than with Isaiah, only 6 hours, and Dr. Harrison remarked that Victoria was built for childbearing. She was small and fierce and had a shock of red-gold hair that matched neither parent. She looks like my mother did when she was young, Victoria said wonderingly, studying the baby's face, before her hair went white. They named her Violet Vera Brennan, honoring both the initial tradition and Victoria's mother. Isaiah, meeting his sister for the first time, stared at her with suspicion and fascination in equal measure. When she grabbed his finger with her tiny hand, his face split into a wide smile. "Baby," he announced. "My baby." "Our baby," Victoria corrected gently. "You are her big brother. You will help protect her and teach her things." Isaiah took this responsibility seriously, refusing to leave Violet's side for more than a few minutes. When she cried, he patted her awkwardly and said, "Okay, okay," in his small voice. When she slept, he sat nearby, watching over her like a tiny guardian. Isaac watched his growing family with awe. 4 years ago, he had been alone. Now he had a wife he loved more with each passing day, a son who was his pride and joy, and a daughter who had stolen his heart the moment he held her. The house he had built was truly a home, filled with noise and love and life. The years flowed by in the way they do when life is full and good. Isaiah grew tall and strong, showing early signs of his father's skill with animals and his mother's quick mind. Violet was sunshine personified, always laughing, always curious, fearless in a way that terrified and delighted Isaac in equal measure. 2 years after Violet, they welcomed another son, Ivan, who was calm and observant, content to watch and learn before jumping into action. The ranch expanded as Isaac's success continued. He bought adjacent land when it became available, increasing his grazing range. He built a larger barn and added a bunkhouse for the 4 ranch hands he now employed year-round. Victoria's sewing business grew as well, and she eventually took on an apprentice, a young woman from Santa Rosa who wanted to learn the trade. They made improvements to the house over the years, adding a proper indoor pump for water, expanding the porch, building a separate workshop for Victoria's sewing. But the basic structure remained the same, the house Isaac had built when he promised to give Victoria and her mother a home. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac and Victoria stood on the hill above the house, visiting Vera's grave as they often did. Below them, their 3 children played in the yard under the watchful eye of Maria, who had become part of the family over the years. The ranch spread out around them, prosperous and well-tended. The house stood solid and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney. "You remember the day we met?" Victoria asked, leaning against Isaac's side. "Every detail. You stepped off that train and I thought I had never seen anyone so beautiful, and so scared, though you were trying to hide it." "I was terrified," Victoria admitted. "I had no idea what kind of man you would be, whether I had made a terrible mistake. When you said you would build us a home, I started to hope. When you kept your word, I started to love you." Isaac wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Best decision I ever made, sending for a mail-order bride, though I suppose the marriage broker deserves some credit for matching us." "I wrote to her last month," Victoria said. "Told her about our family, thanked her for her role in our happiness. She wrote back that ours was one of her favorite success stories." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, then Victoria spoke again. "Mama would have loved seeing this. All of it. The children, the ranch, the life we have built." "She did see it," Isaac reminded her gently. "She saw the beginning and she knew what was coming. She died happy, Victoria. You gave her that." "We gave her that," Victoria corrected. "You could have refused when you learned about her. Most men would have. But you built her a home too, gave her dignity and peace in her final years. She loved you like a son." Isaac felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the emotion that still surfaced when he thought about Vera. "She made it easy to love her, and she gave me you." They returned to the house as the sun began to set, painting the sky in the colors Vera had loved so much. The children ran to greet them, all 3 talking at once about their games and discoveries. Isaac scooped Violet up while Victoria took Ivan's hand, and Isaiah walked between them, trying to act too grown-up for hand-holding but staying close. That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Isaac and Victoria sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold. The stars were brilliant in the clear desert sky, thousands of points of light stretching to infinity. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria asked. "Everything," Isaac said. "How lucky I am. How different my life could have been if you had not answered that advertisement. How much I love you and our children. How grateful I am for every day we have together." Victoria smiled and kissed him softly. "I am grateful too. For your kindness when I arrived with my mother. For the home you built with such care. For the way you love our children. For the man you are. You gave me and Mama a place to belong when we had nowhere else to go. You gave us family." You gave me the same, Isaac said. I was alone, just existing, not really living. You brought life and love and purpose. You made this house a home. They sat together in the comfortable silence of long companionship, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Inside, their children slept safely. Around them, the home Isaac had built sheltered everyone he loved. The future stretched ahead, full of promise and possibility. Isaac thought about the telegram he had received years ago, the one announcing Victoria's arrival and the unexpected news that she was bringing her mother. He thought about how easily he could have refused, could have sent a message saying the arrangement was off. How different everything would be if he had made that choice. But he had not refused. He had welcomed them both, had built a home large enough for a family, had kept his word. And in doing so, he had found everything he had been seeking and so much more. I love you, Victoria Brennan, he said quietly. I love you, Isaac Brennan, she replied, her hand finding his in the darkness. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of seasons and ranch life. Isaiah grew into a young man of 17, tall and capable, already managing much of the ranch work alongside his father. He had his father's steady nature and his mother's intelligence, and Isaac knew the ranch would be in good hands when the time came to pass it on. Violet, at 15, was as vibrant and fearless as ever, riding horses as well as any cowboy and helping her mother with the sewing business, which had expanded to include teaching classes for young women who wanted to learn the skill. She had her grandmother's spirit and her mother's talent, and boys from town were already starting to pay attention, much to Isaac's consternation and Victoria's amusement. Ivan, at 13, remained the observer, the thinker. He loved books and had already announced his intention to become a teacher, which Isaac supported wholeheartedly. Not every son needed to be a rancher, and Ivan's gifts lay elsewhere. 2 more children had joined the family over the years, another daughter named Iris and a youngest son named Ian, both healthy and happy additions to the chaos and joy of their household. The house that Isaac had built so many years ago was full to bursting with life and love, exactly as Vera had hoped. Victoria, now in her early 40s, had aged gracefully, her auburn hair streaked with silver, her face lined but still beautiful to Isaac's eyes. She ran the household with efficient affection, managed her thriving business, and somehow still found time to sit with Isaac on the porch every evening, talking about their day and planning for tomorrow. Isaac himself was 51 now, his dark hair mostly gray, his body showing the effects of decades of ranch work. But he was healthy and strong, content with the life he had built, grateful for every moment. One spring evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Victoria said, "Do you ever think about what might have been? If I had not seen that advertisement, if you had not sent for a bride?" Isaac considered the question. "Sometimes, but I cannot imagine it, really. This life, this family, it feels like it was always meant to be." "I feel the same," Victoria said. "Even the hard parts, losing Mama, the struggles and worries along the way, they all led to this moment, to us here together with our family safe and happy. I would not change a single thing." Isaiah rode up to the house just then, dismounting with the easy grace of someone who had spent his life on horseback. "Everything is settled for the night," he reported. "The new calves are doing well. I think we will have a good year." "You did good work today," Isaac told his son. "Thank you." Isaiah grinned, then headed inside to clean up for dinner. Isaac watched him go, feeling pride and a touch of melancholy. His son was nearly grown, would probably marry soon and start his own family. Time moved forward relentlessly. "He will make a fine rancher," Victoria said, reading Isaac's thoughts as she often did. And he will stay close. This land is in his blood just as it is in yours. I know. It is just strange to realize how fast it all goes. Seems like yesterday I was building this house, waiting for you to step off that train. 22 years, Victoria said wonderingly. 22 years since you stood on that platform in Santa Rosa, probably terrified that you had made a terrible mistake sending for a mail-order bride. Isaac laughed. I was terrified, but then I saw you helping your mother so gentle and patient, and I knew you were special. And I saw you accept us both without question, and I knew you were a good man. The rest, the love and the life we have built, that came later. But the foundation was there from the start. They were called inside for dinner, where the table was crowded with children and conversation and laughter. Isaac looked around at his family, at the home he had built all those years ago, at the life he and Victoria had created together, and felt complete. After dinner, as was their custom, they gathered in the main room. Isaac read from the newspaper while Victoria worked on mending, the older children doing homework or chores, the younger ones playing quietly. It was ordinary, mundane even, but to Isaac it was everything. Later in their bedroom, Victoria sat at the small vanity Isaac had built for her years ago, brushing her hair before bed. Isaac watched her from their bed, thinking about how beautiful she still was to him, how much he loved her. "What are you looking at?" Victoria asked, catching his gaze in the mirror. "My wife. The woman who answered my advertisement and changed my life completely." Victoria turned to face him. "The man who built me and my mother a home, who kept his promise and exceeded every hope I had. Who gave me a family and a life I never dreamed possible." She came to bed, and Isaac wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. They had been married for more than 2 decades, had been through hardships and triumphs, had raised 5 children together, had built something lasting and true. "Thank you for coming west," Isaac whispered. "Thank you for welcoming us," Victoria whispered back. They fell asleep in each other's arms, surrounded by the home they had built together, sheltered by love that had grown deeper and stronger with every passing year. The ranch continued to prosper over the following years. Isaiah married at 20, bringing home a lovely young woman named Sarah who fit into the family as though she had always been there. They built their own home on ranch land, close enough to help with the work but far enough for privacy. When their first child was born, a boy they named Isaac after his grandfather, Isaac Sr. held his grandson and wept with joy. Violet married at 18, choosing a young lawyer from Santa Rosa who respected her independent spirit and supported her dreams. They remained in town, where Violet took over her mother's sewing business, expanding it further. Ivan left for teachers' college in Albuquerque, but wrote every week and visited whenever he could. He had found his calling and thrived in it. The younger children continued to grow and find their own paths. Iris wanted to be a doctor, a bold ambition for a woman, but one that Isaac and Victoria supported completely. Ian, the youngest, showed signs of inheriting his father's gift with animals and seemed likely to follow in the ranching tradition. As Isaac reached his 60th birthday, he began to slow down, turning more and more of the daily operations over to Isaiah. His body ached in ways it never had before, and he tired more easily. But he was content. He had lived a full life, had built something that would outlast him, had loved deeply and been loved in return. One evening in late summer, Isaac and Victoria made their way up the hill to visit Vera's grave, as they still did regularly despite the passing of more than 20 years. The wooden marker had long since been replaced by a proper stone that read, "Vera Garrett, beloved mother and grandmother, 1815–1880, she found home in the West." She has been gone longer than she was with us here, Victoria observed, but I still miss her. I still wish I could tell her about the grandchildren, about the great-grandchildren. I think she knows, Isaac said, and I think she is proud of you, of the life you have made. They stood in silence for a while, then Isaac spoke. I want to be buried here too when the time comes. On this hill, looking at the house and the land, next to your mother who gave me you. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Do not talk about dying. You are not that old. I am not planning on it any time soon, Isaac assured her, but I want you to know my wishes. And Victoria, when that day comes, I want you to keep living. Keep running the ranch with Isaiah, keep being involved with the grandchildren, keep filling that house with life and love. Do not mourn forever. I will mourn as long as I need to, Victoria said firmly. You are my heart, Isaac Brennan. You have been for more than 20 years. When you go, a part of me goes with you. And a part of me stays with you, Isaac said, pulling her close. In our children, in this land, in every board of that house I built for you, I will never really be gone. But Isaac was not ready to die yet. He had several more good years left in him, years of watching grandchildren grow, of working alongside his son on the land he loved, of sitting on the porch with Victoria every evening as the sun set over the canyon. On their 30th anniversary, the family threw a large celebration. All 5 children came with their spouses and children, filling the house and yard with noise and chaos and joy. Neighbors came from miles around. Pastor Williams, now quite elderly himself, gave a blessing. There was music and dancing and more food than any group could reasonably eat. Isaac stood with Victoria, surrounded by the family they had created, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. He thought about that young man of 32 who had stood on a train platform, nervous and hopeful, waiting for a mail-order bride he had never met. He thought about the scared young woman who had stepped off the train with her elderly mother, hoping for acceptance and finding so much more. Look at what we made, Victoria said softly, gesturing at the celebration around them. Look at all this love and life. We did this, Isaac. You and me. You and me, Isaac agreed, and every day was worth it. Every moment led to this. As the sun set that evening, their children and grandchildren gathered around them. Isaiah proposed a toast. To my parents, who taught us that love means keeping your promises, who showed us that family is built through devotion and sacrifice and choosing each other every single day, who created a home that will stand for generations, to Isaac and Victoria Brennan. To Isaac and Victoria, everyone echoed, raising glasses and cups. Isaac looked at Victoria and she looked at him, and in that moment they were right back on that train platform, 2 people taking a leap of faith, choosing to trust, choosing to hope, choosing each other. I love you, Isaac said, as he had said thousands of times over the years. I love you, Victoria replied, as she had replied every single time. They kissed, and their family cheered, and the celebration continued as the stars came out over the New Mexico desert, the same stars that had witnessed their beginning and now witnessed this milestone. Isaac Brennan lived to be 71 years old, passing peacefully in his sleep on a cold January night with Victoria beside him. His funeral was attended by more than 100 people, testimony to the life he had lived and the impact he had made. He was buried on the hill next to Vera Garrett, overlooking the house he had built and the land he had loved. Victoria mourned deeply, but also lived fully, as Isaac had asked. She remained active in the ranch management, consulted on major decisions, and continued to be the heart of the family. She lived another 8 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, sharing stories of Isaac and keeping his memory alive. When she died at 76, quietly in her sleep in the house Isaac had built for her. She was laid to rest on the hill between her mother and her husband, the two people who had defined her life in the West. Her stone read, Victoria Gardner Brennan, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, 1853–1931. She made a house a home. The ranch passed to Isaiah, who ran it with the same integrity and dedication his father had shown. The house continued to shelter family for generations, expanded and modernized over the years, but never losing its essential character as a place built with love and purpose. And sometimes, when the evening light hit just right, people would swear they could see two figures on the hill above the house, standing close together, watching over the land and the family they had created. A mail-order bride and the cowboy who had built them all a home, together forever in the place where they had found love and created a legacy that would endure. The story of Isaac and Victoria became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The great romance that started with a telegram and a train platform. The promise kept, the home built, the love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. It was a story of the Old West, of hard work and faith, of taking chances and choosing love. And it all began with a simple act of kindness. A cowboy willing to welcome not just a bride but her elderly mother, building them both a home and, in doing so, building a future filled with more love than he had ever imagined possible.